The United Nations, recognized as the world's largest and most significant international organization, serves as an independent and universal platform. It is the only global forum where all 193 member nations come together to discuss peace, security, human rights, and development. Today, we'll explore the United Nations role and resolutions on Tibet with Tenzin Kunkhen from the UN, EU, and Human Rights Desk of the Department of Information and International Relations at the Central Tibetan Administration. Welcome back to our program, Kunkhen.
Thank you so much.
So I'd like to begin by asking you, over the course of history, how many UN resolutions have addressed Tibet, and what do they say about Tibet?
So till now, since 1959, there are 3 resolutions passed in the United Nations, and those 3 are from the General Assembly. Before going into details on these resolutions, it is important to know that what kind of resolution it is, and are those resolutions legally binded or not. So the resolutions passed by the General Assembly are generally non-legal binding, which means that the member state doesn't necessarily have to adhere to the call of actions being written in the resolutions. So the 3 resolutions passed by the General Assembly took place in 1959, and then in 1961, and the last one in 1965. And all these resolutions talked about the Tibetan people's fundamental rights, and the later 2 resolutions, they emphasize on the right to self-determination of the Tibetan people. And it is important to note that all these 3 resolutions have not talked about the Tibet's legal status under international law. Rather, they talked about fundamental human rights. And when we talk about who sponsored those resolutions, so the first resolution was actually sponsored by 2 nations, namely Malaya and Ireland. And after that, in 1961, the 2 co-sponsors of the resolution, Malaya and Ireland, were joined by El Salvador and Thailand in sponsoring the resolution of the 1961, which is the resolution 1723 on Tibet. And as I mentioned, it renews its call for, cessation of practices which violates the fundamental human rights of the Tibetan people, and to respect the self-determination of the Tibetan people. And then in 1965, the resolution was sponsored by the 4 members who sponsored the first 2 resolutions, and were joined by 2 more nations. And it was passed, but it didn't mention the legal status of Tibet in the international law as an independent country. Rather, it talked about respecting the human rights and the self-determination of the Tibetan people at the time. So these are the only 3 resolutions that were passed in the United Nations since China's invasion till now.
So these resolutions were addressed at the General Assembly, which is located in New York, right, in the United States. So when we look back now to these 3 important resolutions passed in the General Assembly, how do you see the significance of these 3 resolutions on Tibet?
So yeah, first of all, having a resolution passed on Tibet is a sign of recognition of Tibetan issue, or the concern raised by the Tibetan people at the time. But as I mentioned, since the resolutions passed in the General Assembly are not legally binded, so the nation, the member state, the targeted member state have the space and the opportunity to not really implement the call for action being written in the resolutions. And it is believed that these 3 resolutions, while it was passed since Tibet's invasion, it is till now remains as one of the most unresolved issue since the concerns of the Tibetan people have not been met yet. Even now, China's violation of fundamental human rights of Tibetans are still taking place, and despite passing of these 3 resolutions, the results have not been seen yet. So I think while resolutions are important, but it is also important that the member states need to respect these resolutions and act according to the call of actions.
So with many principal organs under the United Nations, because United Nations itself has many specialized agencies, and it's altogether it's a complex organizations, right? Can you tell us which part of the United Nations deals or most closely with the Tibetan causes, and where can Tibet's concerns can be presented, mostly like human rights violations by the Chinese government in Tibet to the United Nations?
Yes, United Nations, it is a complex organization where there are 193 member states, and in terms of Tibetan issue, we know that Tibetan issue is much more than human rights issue, right? We also have our status in the international law, whether we have our own narrative of Tibet being an independent country before Chinese invasion. And in terms of human rights, with the violation of human rights taking place inside Tibet, we also need to address these concerns to whether it being at the United Nations or any other governments. And so in terms of the human rights issues, the United Nations have a mechanism which solely addresses human rights violations taking place across the world, and of course in the member state nations. And we have Human Rights Council, which is a mechanism in the United Nations, and the Tibetan issues in terms of human rights are mostly addressed in the United Nations Human Rights Councils. Under the United Nations Human Rights Council, we also have special procedures who are an independent experts. They are not UN staff, but rather they are experts in their own field of human rights, be it religion, culture, language. So special procedures are, one of those individuals who assess, monitors, and reports on different human rights issues across the world.
So when you say special procedures, you mean special rapporteur?
Special rapporteurs, yes. So these are the independent experts, and we also have the space and opportunity to send reports, to communicate with these experts and raise concerns regarding the human rights violations. We also have a universal periodic review, as you know, which is one of the mechanisms of the United Nations, where every member states are being assessed or reviewed regarding their human rights records in every 4.5 years. And it was started in 2008, and as you know, in 2024, China underwent its 4th Universal Periodic Review, and we have noticed that the amount of and the number of member states who supported Tibet or mentioned Tibet has almost doubled as compared to the previous Universal Periodic Review of China in 2018. So Universal Periodic Review is one of the avenue where we can raise our concerns on human rights violations and pressure China to respect or change or improve the human rights situation inside Tibet. So in terms of special rapporteurs, there are 2 parts to that. First one is charter-based, and then we have treaty-based special procedures. So treaty-based, as the name suggests, is the monitoring of member states' records based on the international human rights treaties, For example, we have Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. We also have Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. And there is also a Committee Against Torture, which monitors any act of torture being carried out on any individuals by the member states. We also have Committee on Enforced Disappearance. You might remember the case of His Eminence the 11th Panchen Lama Ginrin Chögying Yima when he was abducted. His case was submitted to the Working Group on the Enforced Disappearance, which took his case and questioned China regarding the whereabouts and well-being of Ginrin Chögying Yima. So these are the avenues where we can, raise our concerns and, call on these committee to pressure China, to question them on regarding, any act of human rights violations. So if I talk a bit about the Human Rights Council, the Council holds not fewer than 3 sessions per year, one in February and March, one in June to July, and the last one in September and October. So during this council session, any individual or organization, NGOs, which have the status of ECOSOC, as we call it, Economic and Social Council. So those with the ECOSOC status, they are allowed it inside the Human Rights Council session to actually listen or even to deliver a written or an oral statement while the session is, in process. And as we know that in the past, on behalf of CTA, the office of the Tibet Bureau Office in Geneva, they regularly attend these Human Rights Council sessions where they also host side events while the session is ongoing in order to raise awareness regarding the Tibetan concerns and issues to the other member states who are interested, and also with the help of other NGOs such as Society for Threatened Peoples who have the ECOSOC status. Our staff at the Tibet Bureau Office in Geneva, they are able to deliver written and oral statements during these Human Rights Council sessions. So this is one of the avenues where we can raise our voice and make the member states aware of the ongoing situation inside Tibet.
Talking about the oral statement and participation at the United Nations Human Rights Council meetings, could you explain the steps involved in submitting these oral statements about Tibet at the UN?
So yeah, in terms of delivering oral statements or written statements in these Human Rights Council sessions, first thing is it is important to have the ECOSOC status, and the Tibetan NGOs, namely TCHRD, Tibet Women's Associations, they do these, they attend these Human Rights Council sessions with the help of other NGOs which have the ECOSOC status. So and then in terms of sending written complaints or raising any type of human rights violations, the United Nations also have a specific mechanism for that too. The complaint procedure mechanism of the United Nations, it allows any individual or any group or any non-government organizations to send their complaint regarding any violations of rights in their region. So any individual organizations or non-governmental organizations have the opportunity and the means to communicate their concerns with the United Nations Human Rights Council or the Secretariat through a procedure called complaint procedure established by the United Nations. So for that, you actually need to follow some few steps, and you also need to pass the eligibility criteria in order to, successfully send your complaint to the United Nations. For that, initially, when you write your complaint or I won't call it a report because it needs to be very brief, 1 or 2 pages at the most. So it will go through an initial screening stage where they will decide whether your complaint is really worth the discussion at the United Nations or not. So after that, it will go through a stage where it will be considered by the working group on communications, which is another group of people working in the United Nations who actually checks all these communications. And then after that, it will go through the stage of consideration by the working groups on situations. So after these 2 stages have passed, then it will be considered by the Human Rights Council, which is the 47 member states, which consists of the 47 member states. And then after your complaint passed these 4 stages, it will be discussed and it will be communicated with the particular member states to which this complaint is written to. So these complaints are important because it gives you the opportunity to actually communicate your issues with the particular member states, and not only that, it also puts the particular member states on the spot, because it will be discussed in the Human Rights Council session, and that member state has to consider the issue raised by the Human Rights Council. And if I talk about how effective are these complaints or the complaint procedure of the Human Rights Council, looking back at the record, it has these complaints when it actually reached the Human Rights Council have actually resulted in the release of detainees or political opponents or prisoners. It has also led to the reducing of prison sentences of few individuals, not only talking about the Tibetan but in general. But in case of Tibet, you'll remember last year the communication sent by special rapporteurs regarding the whereabouts of Gosherab Gyatso and Rinchen Surim. So only after the special procedures sent these communication to the Chinese government replied with information regarding the 2 arrested and imprisoned political prisoners. So it is effective in a sense that your issue will be raised and it will be discussed in the Human Rights Council session, and the member state in one way or another will be held accountable for their actions.
And what are some of the latest UN resolutions concerning Tibet, apart from the 3 resolutions which was addressed at the General Assembly in early 60s, right? So, and what issues do they cover, the recent resolutions, and have you noticed any significant shifts in the emphasis or wordings?
Okay, so as I mentioned, the 3 resolutions we have already discussed at the beginning, and to talk more on the communications or statements produced by the special procedures, raising concerns on the human rights situation inside Tibet. There are lots of communications, sent not only by 1 or 2 special procedures or independent experts, but a group of independent experts. They also sent joint communications to the Chinese government, questioning them about their, treatment of Tibetan people inside Tibet. If I discuss few of them, this year, in July, I think, we know that the China's building of Kamtok Dam in Tibet raised huge concern on the well-being as well as its human rights records of the Tibetan people. So a few months after that, a group of 13 UN special rapporteurs, they sent a joint statement to the Chinese government, questioning them about the way they are treating the Tibetan people. It also talked about the forced relocation of the Tibetan people from their own ancestral land, also the torture and the arbitrary arrest and beatings of the Tibetan people, more than 1,000 Tibetan people in Chinese detention centers and prison. So it is one of the latest communications sent by the special procedures to the Chinese government, And also, if we talk about last year as well, in August of 2023, a group of UN experts, they also raised the concerns on the health and whereabouts of 9 imprisoned Tibetan human rights defenders, right? So these are, this shows that the Tibetan concerns are being, looked upon by the independent experts as part of the United Nations mechanism. And we also have experts raising concerns on the forced assimilation of Tibetan children in China's boarding school. And if I talk about another instance where the special rapporteurs have questioned China, in February of last year, 6 UN experts, they have raised concerns on the human rights violations and particularly extensive labor exploitations that are taking place inside Tibet. So it depends on the ongoing concerns of the Tibetan people as well as what is actually being discussed in news media. So the independent experts, they monitor, as I mentioned, and if they find any sort of valid and real information on Tibet, they will communicate the same with the PRC government and question them about the actual implementation of their human rights international obligations that they have as a UN member states. The shift or the difference in these communication, I think it depends on the severity of the situation.
Can you talk to us about the effectiveness of these resolutions tabled at the United Nations by the Special Rapporteur or the independent bodies or agencies or exiled governments like ours?
The 3 resolution that was passed in the aftermath of Tibet's invasion by the Chinese government, we see that there are some call for actions for the Chinese government to respect the Tibetan people's rights, but but at the moment we see that very little things have changed, or we can also say that the situation have gone from bad to worse. So resolutions are only effective when it is actually respected and acted upon according to the call for action. So the 3 resolutions passed in the General Assembly, I think have yet to yield any result in terms of what was actually discussed in it. And we see that a lot of human rights violations are still going on inside Tibet. Looking on the bright side, we see that be it a resolution or a communication, they actually help in I think for raising awareness on the ongoing issue, right? A lot of these communications, they actually draw attention of the member states on a issue which otherwise wouldn't have been able to discuss in this international platform. So the resolution or communication, they actually helped in raising awareness on the particular ongoing issue. They also create a dialogue to actually discuss the ongoing issues that has been taking place pertaining to any member states of the United Nations. They also serve as a reminder to the particular government about its action and its consequences on any individual or nationality. To summarize it all, I think it is important for the United Nations procedures to keep pressuring China until there's a relative improvement in China's treatment of the Tibetan people inside Tibet. For the Tibetan people, as well as the Tibetan support groups around the world, it is I think very important to keep raising these human rights violations and concerns in the United Nations, be it through advocating at the United Nations regarding the human rights violations in order to actually resolve the ongoing concerns on the human rights violations taking place inside Tibet, courtesy of the People's Republic of China.
So Tenzin Kunkhen, these are my questions for this very important conversation on United Nations on Tibet and United Nations resolutions on Tibet over the years. Thank you so much for taking out your time today.
Thank you.
With this, we have come to the end of today's program of In Conversation with Tibettv. Thank you so much for watching.